Hello everyone, I am Dr. Pallavi Bafna. I have put up a course on clinical trial documentation on Graphy. Now let me begin with my introduction, a small one. I am Dr. Pallavi Bafna. I have done my Masters and my PhD in Pharmacology. I am also a postdoc from State University of New York, that is SUNY at Buffalo. I have almost 13 to 14 years of teaching experience and I have almost 11 years of entrepreneurial experience. So currently I am a business owner. So that's my short introduction. Now this video will give you a glimpse of the course. It will basically answer questions like who, why and what. So who should register or enroll for this course? Why should you take up a course on clinical trial documentation? And what? So what are the contents of this course? So let's begin. So before we begin with the who, why and what, let me tell you in a few lines what is clinical trial documentation. I guess everybody understands it, but just let me put it up, right? So clinical trial documentation, the term itself tells you that this is basically, it refers to all the important or the essential documents or the records that which need to be generated or created and maintained during the entire course of a clinical trial. Why are these documents important? These are important because this guarantees the success of a clinical trial. Why? Because it ensures the quality, the integrity and the reliability of the data which has been collected during the clinical trial. We will discuss this in detail during the course. Next, it will confirm that the trial is in accordance with or complies with all the regulatory requirements and basically the GCP guidelines. We will again discuss this in the course. But this course is important to understand the detailed documents that are required for conducting a clinical trial, right? Now as we said, I will answer the first question, who? So now why you or who should register for this course? So if you are from the pharmaceutical background, if you are from the biotechnology background or you are someone from the medical field, this course is for you. Secondly, if you are looking for opportunities for career growth, competitive compensation, that is a good salary or a good compensation, and thirdly, the most important, you are looking to contribute to medical advancement, this is the right course or the right field for you. So if yes, welcome to the course. After answering who, why, this is so important. Why take up a course for clinical trial documentation? I will go point wise so that you understand how important this course is and what difference it can create in your life. First point, industry growth. Now, we know that the pharmaceutical field or the pharmaceutical industry, the biotechnology industry and the medical device industry all are just booming. What are they contributing? They are bringing new medicines, new drugs or new devices or new biotechnology products into the market. For whom? For clinical use or for use in human beings. When you say pharmaceutical, they are basically dealing in new drugs and new medicines, right? When I say biotechnology, they are getting in new monoclonal antibodies, new vaccines or new serum. When I talk about the medical device industry, they are getting something which can be used as a diagnosis tool or it can be used as a treatment tool. So if I am talking about a diagnostic tool, example, during the COVID times, everybody was developing, the medical device industry was developing corona kits, so diagnostic tools for human use. They are also developing tools or devices which is used as for a therapeutic purpose. So you have stents, you have various implants. So all these three industries are basically bringing in products which are to be used for human purpose, for treatment, for prevention or for diagnosis. Whatever be the case, this is for human use. So these have to be first tested in human beings before they are finally launched into the market. Now we understand that all these industries are already occupied with so many different types of activities. I will discuss the drug discovery process, which will explain how complicated the process is and how long the process is to get a product into the market. So when these three industries are already doing so many things at the same time, So what they do is they hire a organization which we called as CROs or contractual research organizations to carry out the clinical trial management, right? So basically CROs are the organizations who handle all the clinical trials and make the process simpler for these industries. So when I talk about big CROs, we have almost over 1000 CROs, more than 1000 CROs worldwide. I'll just name a few, the most important ones. So we have LabCorp, we have IQVIA, Parexel, Syneos Health, Medpace, and many, many more. So if you are someone who is looking for a job in a CRO, basically you're recruited as a clinical research assistant or a clinical research associate, which you call a CRA, or a clinical research scientist. So if you're looking at CROs as a job opportunity or a job option, you need to be very well versed with clinical trials and clinical trial documentation. So basically this course will help you to understand clinical trial documentation in depth. Secondly, advancements in technology. Now technology is present almost everywhere. I am delivering this lecture to you online with the help of technology. So technology helps in each and every process around us. So similarly, technology is also an important part in clinical trials. Basically, I'll talk about this. This is EDC or electronic data capture systems and remote monitoring tools, which are the technologies which are being widely used in CROs by CRAs. So you also need to have at least a basic knowledge about these systems. So this course will help you with that too. Third, regulatory environment. Now clinical trials, when we say clinical trials, we are testing drugs or devices which are to be used in human beings, and so they have to be tested. And when they have to be tested, it is you're dealing with the safety of individuals or the volunteers who are participating in the trials. So for their safety, regulatory agencies have put up very, very strict or stringent requirements for the data collection and the patient safety. So as a CRA, if you are looking at this as a job option, you should understand all the regulatory requirements, all the strict rules which have been put up by the different agencies which you have to follow while conducting a clinical trial or while even preparing these clinical trial documents. Next, now this is basic what this course will help you with. Now this is about what are the different types of exposure or the opportunities you get if you join a CRO as a CRA. First is globalization of clinical trials. Now every country has its own pharmaceutical industry, a biotechnology industry, or a medical device industry. So every industry is bringing out new drugs and devices into the market. So we have a globalization of clinical trials going on. But mainly India is a more preferred country for clinical trials because of many reasons. First of all, it is almost clinical trials here cost almost 50 to 60% less of that what it costs in other countries. So it's a cheaper way, a cheaper country for carrying out clinical trials. You have a vast population, so you have so many available volunteers and healthy patients out here with so much of genetic diversity. So you get a very easily you get volunteers for the clinical trial. Thirdly, people here are aware, they understand that if I join a clinical trial, he or she gets the added benefit of a developing better product to be tried on her with no added cost. She is not paying for the treatment. So people here are more eager to join into clinical trials. So India, as I said, is a good hub for clinical trials. So if you join in a CRO in India and act as a CRA, you are not only dealing with the clinical trials happening in India, but basically all the agencies or companies outside also prefer India for their clinical trials. So it gives you an exposure to handling international projects as well as interacting with or collaborating with diverse teams from different countries. So it's a very good exposure to people outside India, how do they function and to connect with them. So you have a great opportunity in CROs. Next, career progression. Yes, who doesn't want a career to progress? So yes, CROs give you a very good chance for progression in career, but provided you're skilled enough and you grab those skills as soon as possible. So if you are good at it, initially you join as a clinical research associate or assistant, then you move or progress to a senior CRA position, then a clinical trial manager, and if you do good, you move into more specific or specialized roles such as clinical operations or regulatory affairs. So there is no limit. Yes, you all are interested in what competitive salary, so you definitely, if you are skilled enough and you are good at the documentation process specifically and monitoring the clinical trials excellently well, you get a very good salary in CROs. And if you join big CROs, definitely sky is the limit. Next, yes, remote work opportunities. Post-COVID, all the industries have given chance to work remotely. Similarly with CROs. So you can work remotely, may not be from your home, but here remotely also means that you are sitting in India and handling projects which are conducted anywhere across the country as well as outside the country. So it is so convenient to work remotely in such CROs. So I have answered who and why, right? Now I will be answering what. So what are the course objectives? By the end of this course, I will be able to make you understand different points. Basically, the first being, you will be able to understand the importance of documentation in clinical trials and how it impacts the trial integrity and the regulatory compliance and the overall success of clinical trials. Second, you will be able to identify or prepare essential documents which are required throughout the different phases of clinical trials. Different phases means here I mean before applying for a clinical trial, you need to submit some regulatory documents. So you have a basic understanding of that. Then once it is approved, when you are approved for conducting a clinical trial, every annually what type of documents you have to maintain and submit to the different regulatory agencies, and at the end of the trial, what are the documents that you need to submit so that the product can be launched into the market. Next, you will be able to comprehend with the regulatory guidelines. You will understand what regulatory guidelines basically and the ethical considerations which govern the clinical trials and the clinical trial documentation. So you will be able to prepare documents taking into consideration the guidelines which are put up by various regulatory agencies. Next, you will develop skill. I'll make it happen. I'll help you where you can create your own documents for clinical trials. You will know how to maintain these records and how to review various clinical trial documents. Next, you will be in a position to ensure that the documents are accurate, they are complete, and they are compliant with the guidelines and the regulatory procedures before you submit for the approvals. And lastly, you will be able to recognize the common challenges and the best practices related to clinical trial documentation. So I have divided this course into 6 modules. The first module will be a very introductory one. You will have basically, I'll discuss in detail the drug discovery process. This is very important to understand what are the pain, what is the time frame involved to get the drug to the stage of clinical trial. So how important it is to conduct the clinical trial properly and maintain these documents, because this will determine the success of the whole process that goes into drug discovery. Then I'll also throw light on the overview of clinical trials. I'll be discussing the purpose or the importance of clinical trials and the different phases of clinical trials. And lastly, I'll discuss the stakeholders. Then next, module 2, here I'll be discussing the GCP, that is the Good Clinical Practice Guidelines, the regulatory requirements and the ethics committee, its composition and its role. Third, my module 3 will be on the essential documents. First, I'll discuss about the importance of documentation in clinical trials, and then I'll start with the actual documents, the essential documents required for clinical trials. First is the informed consent form or the ICF and the subject information sheet, that is SIS. In module 4, I'll discuss the essential documents in clinical trials, the most important ones, that is the IB, that is the investigator brochure, and secondly the research protocol or the clinical protocol. Then in module 5, I will discuss the other documents like the case report form, that is CRF, and as I earlier mentioned, the tools, that is the electronic data capture or EDC, and then I will discuss the ethics committee submissions and approvals. In module 6, which will be the last module, I will discuss the essential documents, again the last ones, that is the clinical study report or CSR, which is also called as the final study report. And lastly, I will discuss investigator's site file or the trial master file. So this, all the 6 modules will complete all the essential documents which are required for clinical trial documentation. So that will be that's the end of it today. Thanks for watching this. I hope you all understood what I will be covering the course. So meet you with the course. I will start with module 1. Yes, thank you.